So I'm lucky enough to be joined by presenter Karthi Gnanasegaram to talk about the importance of International Women's Day. So Karthi, Friday the 8th of March is a very important day to celebrate women in sport. So what does it mean to you?
I think particularly having lived abroad for a little while, it's got a global significance in countries where women's rights maybe aren't quite as high up the agenda as they are in other countries. So that's a big part of what International Women's Day I think can bring. Also just the achievements of women that sometimes have been forgotten or just haven't necessarily been celebrated in a big way. We saw a film a couple of years ago which was Hidden Figures, which was about black female mathematicians at NASA, and the stories just disappear sometimes in history for various different reasons, sometimes political, and they don't always come out.
You're a massive sports fan.
Yep.
And if you had to pick one female athlete that's achieved greatness, or simply you're inspired by her, who would you pick?
It's quite a difficult one, obviously. My big sport is tennis, and there are several role models there. I think it's between Billie Jean King and Serena Williams. I probably would say Serena just because she's more my generation. I've grown up watching her as a child, can't believe that she's still playing, and her sister Venus. But she goes across, she transcends the male-female boundary. If you're talking about the sport's greatest in tennis, or just about all sports greatest, male or female, I think she is part of the conversation, and that's a huge thing for a female athlete to have been able to do. And particularly when you look at the background of Venus and Serena, it's a tougher background than most people often in tennis have come through, or particularly at that point. And it was also a very white sport, and they came through and had a lot of difficulties growing up and staying in the sport, I think, really, if you know some of the history to what they went through. So I just think that they are the kind of role models that are still around these days as well and have been playing the sport for a very long time, which makes a big difference.
You've just mentioned two female tennis players, Venus and Serena, who we were lucky enough to film with. How do you feel that women's sport has progressed since working in sport as a presenter? On
the sport side of things, I think in the last few years, particularly 2012, the London Olympics has moved everything forward a lot. There are big changes on the television side and on the radio side in terms of commentary and being able to see sport and visualising it. That makes a huge difference, I think, for children. To be able to watch it as you're growing up and to know that you can go watch cricket live somewhere, or football or rugby, any different sport, that makes a massive difference, I think, for people. And that wasn't around when I was little, apart from tennis. Athletics were the two sports. Tennis particularly is the only one that's 50-50 in terms of audience and the female participation side of things as well. But I think to be able to see it means you can achieve it, and that does make a big difference, and we're part of that, being in the media. I think certain elements of the media, the BBC in particular, were at the forefront of that when the Olympics came in 2012, and making sure that you can see everything on television and you talk about it as much as possible. I think some of the other elements are taking a bit of time to catch up. I think newspapers, you often don't see that much coverage of female sport unless it's a World Cup year or it's a big tournament. I think that's slowly changing, and I think once all the media participates and people then know a bit more, it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, because people want to know how to find the sport, but they don't necessarily know where to go to find out if they can go and watch something live. And I think once that all starts changing, the ball is rolling massively, and you definitely see that young children really want to get involved with sport, and particularly young girls do these days.
It's an exciting time ahead.
Hopefully, yeah.
And I was told that you were a bit of a fan of Sport growing up.
I was.
With your music and your tennis love. Tell me about that when you were younger.
Oh, I used to watch it and try not to leave the house for orchestra rehearsals until I'd seen the tennis section on Sport, which wasn't always at the beginning of the hour. It was often in the second half of the hour, so I had to wait and wait and wait, and Dad would be there going, right, we've got to get to orchestra, you're going to be late. And I would just refuse to leave until I'd seen the tennis section and just got those 2 minutes of highlights for the week, so I knew what was going on in the tennis world, because we didn't have Sky or anything when I was growing up, so it was just my way of keeping in touch with what was going on.
Well, thank you so much, Karthi. Serena and Venus, awesome girls, Sport favourites too, so thank you, Karthi, and I hope you enjoyed our International Women's Day special.